Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and welcome to MBNK News. I am Veronique Lawson for this special news report edition. One of MBN mission is to deliver factual and independent news reporting each month, focusing on the important story that we deem worth giving over, as we construct the worldly fact with the original truth, the kingdom truth. So this month, editor picked that made headlines around the globe, and some intriguing updates on the latest global headline are as follows. So let's dive into it. Kickstarting with our national news item on the agenda is this month began with Julian Assange speaking out since his liberation from prison. In his address, Assange called out the double standard of U.S. policies, claiming that the U.S. has created a risk global legal framework where only American citizens enjoy free speech right, leaving everyone else out of the cold. Julian has been tasked to bring out the uncomfortable truths and much more. Remember, he knows a lot about the dark side of government and seek transparency, reason for declassified file. Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, stated, I quote, "The CIA launched a campaign on retribution against me, showcasing how intelligence agencies can operate beyond their borders to suppress dissent." He also stated that the CIA made plans to kidnap and even kill him while he was in Ecuadorian embassy in London. They also targeted my European colleague, subjecting us to theft, hacking, and spreading false information. My wife and young sons were also in their sight. Assange, in wrapping up his press conference, said, "The CIA aggressively tactic against me, my family, and my associate highlighted how powerful intelligence agency can engage in representation, in repression across national boundaries. Mike Pompeo has been implicated. Remember, Pompeo did a stint as a head of the CIA, then transferred to the State Department Secretary. The dirty secret of CIA and the level of corruption run so deep. Let the tale speak for itself." Thank you.
From years of confinement in a maximum security prison to being here before the representatives of 46 nations and 700 million people is a profound and a surreal shift. The experience of isolation for years in a small cell is difficult to convey. It strips away one's sense of self, leaving only the raw essence of existence. I am yet not fully equipped to speak about what I have endured, the relentless struggle to stay alive, both physically and mentally, nor can I speak yet about the deaths by hanging, murder, and medical neglect of my fellow prisoners. I eventually chose freedom over unrealizable justice after being detained for years and facing a 175-year sentence with no effective remedy. Justice, for me, is now precluded as the US government insisted in writing into its plea agreement that I cannot file a case at the European Court of Human Rights or even a Freedom of Information Act request over what it did to me as a result of its extradition request. I want to be totally clear. I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today after years of incarceration because I pled guilty to journalism. I pled guilty to seeking information from a source. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source. And I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was. I did not plead guilty to anything else. I hope my testimony today can serve to highlight the weaknesses of the existing safeguards and to help those whose cases are less visible but who are equally vulnerable.
Welcome back. Exactly. As Assange said, he didn't plead guilty because of anything, but he pleaded guilty because of journalism. So similarly, Paul's strike made a breaking news involving 47,000 Paul workers who are part of the International Longshoremen Association that impacted 36 ports across the United States, mostly the East Coast. The U.S. port workers ended their strike few days later due to a tentative deals on a wage and contract extension throughout January 15, 2025 was made. Let's hear the tale.
Workers at major shipping ports along the East Coast. Thousands are set to hit the picket line this Tuesday. The International Longshoremen's Association ordering a strike after talks demanding fairer wages hit a standstill. News Nation's Caitlin Becker joins us live from Port Elizabeth, New Jersey. Caitlin, what are we learning here? Major developments since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, truly, Jesse. I was not expecting to hear this today. We're 36 hours before the deadline, and the ILA sent out a communication announcing that they're absolutely going to strike. They're going to walk off the job when their current contract expires. Now, it's a 6-year contract. Each of these contracts are 6 years, and the expiration date is midnight on Monday. So 12:01 Tuesday, these workers are going to walk off the job. There's going to be a full-on work stoppage up and down the East Coast and parts of the Gulf. Now, the ILA has not released any details specifically about exactly where these picket lines are going to be. They said that's going to come likely sometime tomorrow. However, they did note what the major issue was, and it really came down, Jesse, to wage stagnation. They said that the U.S. Maritime Alliance, that is who they're in talks with or were in talks with, just wouldn't come to an agreement about what they called wage subjugation that they said had been happening for years. Now, I have to tell you that from the U.S. MX perspectives, they have said time and again that they were offering industry-leading wages more than the 32%, which was the last hike that their West Coast counterparts got for their contract last year. But the ILA wanted a 77% wage hike, and they just couldn't come to an agreement. Now, these two groups haven't been at the negotiating table for months. These talks stalled back in June. So this is something, kind of an eventuality that we were all expecting. And the ILA president has said in the past that they've been planning for this for a year. So the impacts could be far ranging, though, Jesse.
Can we talk about that? Because what we're referring to, just to make it clear for our audience, is essentially the entire East Coast. What is the impact on customers come Tuesday?
Could be pretty large. Probably Tuesday itself, we won't feel it, but the ripple effect, according to retail experts, are things that we could certainly feel. And you said pretty much the entire East Coast, and I actually want to read you the list of the 14 ports that are going to be impacted. They're, of course, the port of New York and New Jersey, which is where I'm at right now, as well as the ports of Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Norfolk, Wilmington, Charleston, Savannah, Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa, Mobile, New Orleans, and Houston. That's a massive, massive number of huge, huge cities. And every single good you can think of flows in and out of these ports. So as I said, the ripple effect could be pretty large. We could be seeing increases in shipping costs, delays in shipments, this backlog that that's gonna sit untouched, not being able to be loaded and unloaded, because that's specifically what we're talking about here, the loading and the unloading of these shipping containers. And one of the things that the union had a problem with was the thought that their jobs could be automated in the future. I think we're hearing that in a lot of different industries, and that's, of course, a sticking point here as well. Now, full automation is off the table. There is a current ban for that already, and the USMX said they're going to keep that. However, they wanted to negotiate semi-automation, and these big cranes that you see behind me at this port, those are things that could potentially be semi-automated or fully automated, and that means these workers could potentially lose their jobs in the future. So in addition to, of course, all of these shipping issues and the ripple effect that could have with commerce as we ramp into the holiday season, all these people are going to be out of a job too. So hopefully the strike won't last for too long and these two can come to an agreement on each side kind of getting what they want. And we do know that the White House had tried to get these two sides back to the bargaining table because they wanted to avoid this exact situation that we are going to find ourselves in on Tuesday. However, the Biden administration has said that they support collective bargaining and they've never tried to intervene in a strike in the past, and they're not going to now.
Today don't know what a strike is. Right. When my men hit the streets from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does.
I will cripple you. Can you imagine when longshoremen strike? Nobody has food in the store. And as a ripple effect, we also have the Teamster from California. The Victoria actually witnesses also a strike, the Amazon Teamster, rather demanding that the e-commerce giant recognizes their union and also fair play and also respect. Every human being needs respect, not only the longshoreman, nor the Amazon Teamster. Here to tell.
Company in the world, but they don't share the wealth with workers that create it for them. Amazon's never going to give us something unless we take it from them.
That's right. That's right.
And every single person out here is going to make that happen.
Amazon said in their peak season planning doc, they wanted to give us only 60 cents for a raise this year. Is that acceptable? No! But it's because of workers at DHL, workers at Amazon facilities around the country, and right here at KCBG organizing. That's how we got a more than 100% increase in what they were willing to give.
It's time for us to stand together and continue fighting for what we're worth. It's time to show them just how essential we see ourselves today. Because without us, these profits that Bezos comfortably hoards in his mansion do not exist.
Right.
So it's time to fight, because when Teamsters fight, Teamsters win. And who are we?
Teamsters!
Who are we?
Teamsters!
Who are we?
Teamsters!
Exactly. It's time to fight for better job, for fair pay. It's time to fight to survive. It's time to fight. And we are here in that together, in a sense that we bring you those news, and especially those people that have been long forgotten, because everybody is just popping up into the camera trying to say what is not right. It's time for better payment. It's time for the people to rise up and fight for their right. Next, on local news, continue the development also with Sean P. Diddy comes, which is expected to disclose a list of additional individuals implicated in that arrest. The name will be surprising. According to Attorney Busby, Sean Diddy comes is among the many powerful people who may face repercussion for alleged sexual assault in his party. In a Houston press conference, Attorney Tony Busby indicated he will soon reveal all the alleged offenders and witnesses connected to Combs. Busby, representing over 100 alleged victims, stated, I quote, "We are committed to pursuing this case, no matter who gets implicated, and promise to expose the enabler of Combs' behavior." He warned that the list of names would be surprising and included those who encouraged the misconduct. He urged those involved to come forward, suggesting many might be trying to erase evidence. Busby also noted that half of the victims he represents are male, and incident reported in multiple states since 1991. Combs representative facing nearly a dozen lawsuits for sexual and physical abuse have denied all allegations. Not surprising, right? The 54-year-old rapper turned business mogul was arrested last month on serious charges, including racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. He pled not guilty, but was denied bail and remains at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. A March raid on his home in Los Angeles and Miami uncovered over 1,000 baby butter oil, various drugs, and three AR, which is gun, 50 rifle. Get ready for the big names. They are coming out. Get ready. There's going to be amazing, surprisingly. Some of the people that you thought they were shielded, they are all in it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to MBN&X. We are diving into some intriguing global headlines. So, let's jump right into the next news story. Remember, it's important to stay informed and engaged in global affairs. So, let's stay connected and keep each other in the loop about what's happening around the world. Again, don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more intriguing content coming up next.
Thank you and welcome back. Only just like it was not enough, this month of October, also subsequently, Hurricane Helen and Hurricane Milton delivered only Hurricane Helen by himself delivered 250 billion huge damage to the southeastern United States, concentrated in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. Especially North Carolina people, they were really affected. They are still even affected even to today. And it's said that it's going to take almost a year for the damage to be cleaned up. 2 weeks later, just as it was not enough, Milton hurricane hit the news, wreaked havoc on Florida, causing additional 50 billion. Both storms killing over 250 people. There's some name that is still coming up. Here the tale from these videos.
Y'all understand how bad it is in the southeast right now. We have towns that don't exist anymore. Chimney Rock is gone. The city of Asheville is cut off from the world. This is not an exaggeration. All the bridges leading into the city have been washed away. They have no food, no power, no water, no internet, no cell service. They don't even have radio. It's a complete dead zone. No one knows what's going on in there. I don't think I'm being dramatic when I say that this is a Hurricane Katrina level event. There was a woman in my town who called for an ambulance, and the ambulance got stranded. And they were stranded for 24 hours, and to my knowledge, the patient didn't make it. People are dying. They're still dying. I've been running the generator for the last 3 days, and we're starting to run out of gas. And this is on Highway 123 heading from Aisley to Greenville. And this was a 1 mile long line to get gas because they were the only people we knew around that had gas left. I got all the way to the end and they were out. They had no gas. We checked every gas station in Pickens and Aisley and Liberty, nothing. And I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out of gas, I tell you that much. Try to steal some from my car maybe to keep my food cold, but even then, I don't know. This is the I-40 bridge, from Tennessee to North Carolina. It's gone. It don't exist no more either. We have people dying out here. Man, we need help. We need help.
mention, remember, it's best to put a tarp down up against the door if that's what you're preparing. Put that down first. That's watertight. Put the bags on that. That will hold it and really help to protect the water from getting in there. All right, here are the numbers right now. As you can see, 85-mile-per-hour winds. The latest track has nudged to the north just a little bit. But look at those numbers right there, 145-mile-per-hour winds. That would be during the day on Tuesday. Tuesday nights it's approaching us. It looks like we're dealing with this on Wednesday. There will be some wind shear that comes down from the north and the west here that's going to be pushing on this. And because of that, we think it will weaken a little bit. And even this forecast may change a little bit. But there's so many questions up in the air right now that we still don't know exactly where this is going to go. We do know it's been rapidly intensifying throughout the day today. Pressure's down, wind is up. Movement's now to the east at around 7 miles per hour. Recon's out there right now. We've got one plane flying around the situation, another one flying, well, two flying in the storm. That data that they get goes into the forecast models, and that makes these models, this is the European, or this is actually the GFS, that makes them better. And we should get a better idea, and the models should start to agree with each other more as we get going over the next day or two. This is Tuesday at 8 a.m., right off of Cozumel, right off of the northern Yucatan. Then by Wednesday at 9 a.m., the GFS has it well offshore. So the time, and one of the runs that we have here locally is doing the same thing, very slow. And then a landfall, not until, this is the very latest run, just came in. Look at that. It's up towards Crystal River, up towards Hernando County with a landfall Wednesday night. The timing has completely slowed on this. This is the European forecast model. We'll get another one of these. This is Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then landfall would be Wednesday evening along Tampa. And the Hurricane Center is faster than that. So there's a lot of disagreement here in the forecast model. So what we want you to know is that we're looking at where it goes on landfall because that's where you're going to get the worst surge to that point and points to the south of it. But what I want to show you right here, the yellow, the orange, and the red, those are the hurricane force winds. This is going to be similar to Helene. In fact, that instead of a storm this big, you're going to get a storm this big. And so everybody's getting wind, right? Not everybody's getting water. You can see it right there. That's where we have it moving on shore. This would be Wednesday afternoon. But look at that orange. That's 60-mile-per-hour winds, sustained with gusts in the 80s. Look, that covers almost from Crystal River down to Venice and Vemo, all the way out to Highlands County, all of Polk County, right? Everybody's going to get some wind. And depending on exactly where it goes, we'll see who gets the highest, obviously, if it's around the center. So if you're asked to evacuate, please do so. They're doing it for a reason. This is just the latest forecast from the Hurricane Center, and you can see they have it coming in right here. All right, they had it coming in down here. But you get the idea. If the storm comes in here, because of the way that the winds flow around and counterclockwise, you get the worst surge right here. You're going to get winds like this up here. So it blows a lot of the surge out, although we got to watch part of the bay. Okay, that will change. I would love to say that that's exactly what's going to happen. I wouldn't want it to happen there, but that's going to change, and that's what we're watching very closely over the next couple of days. We don't know exactly where this is, and that's why you're going to get evacuations for Pinellas, for Hillsborough, for Manatee, and Sarasota County. There's the rain. We're all going to get a rain, but I think the heaviest rain will be up to the north. Now, for a little bit more on specifics, as much as we can, here's meteorologist, did I say that right? Colleen Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Bobby. All right, so Hurricane Milton, what you need to do right now, it's prep time. So when the early impacts that we'll start feeling would be Tuesday late and then moving into Wednesday, we're expecting that landfall. So we're expecting for the impact, tropical storm and hurricane force winds, surge, especially south of the storm. And again, we're fine tuning that exact area. But what you need to do right now, stock up on those hurricane supplies and obey those evacuation orders. We already have current evacuations in place for Manatee and Pinellas. Manatee, mandatory evacuation zone A and B. Also, all mobile homes, and this applies to everybody, but by 2 p.m. they want you out of there for Manatee County. Pinellas, mandatory evacuation for those long-term hospital facilities, as well as assisted living. And Anna Maria Island, they want you out by noon. Moving into Pasco County, a mandatory evacuation by Monday, tomorrow, 10 a.m. That includes zones A and B, all mobile homes. And again, mobile homes are covered under all of these counties, low-lying and flood-prone areas. areas. There is a voluntary evacuation by 10 a.m. tomorrow, and that includes evacuation C only. Also, if you are somebody that's registered special needs and anybody that's vulnerable to power loss, they are, of course, asking you to evacuate as well. Satellite and radar here locally, we have a lot of moisture in our atmosphere. That can lead to flash flooding issues if we have some hefty downpours here over the next 24, 48 hours ahead of Milton alone. And then, of course, once Milton does get here, we are expecting a lot of rainfall across our area. Right now, we are seeing some heavier rain down by Port Charlotte, Sarasota. If we look at our flood watch, don't forget that is in effect. It started this morning and it goes until Thursday morning.
And as we know that those hurricanes, whether it be Helene or Milton, are all man-made. They are all the manipulation of HUD. And so they're trying to counterfeit the works of God, but it will not work. So let's continue on this local news in the US before we move to the international one. Last but not least, on this local news, the major warning in the ongoing geopolitical news, the US presidential election coming up next month, that could plausibly lead to an unrest, sort of, or a kind of not civil war, but certainly something that will cause the people to not be at peace. Let's hear the tale from General Mike Flynn.
We're going to see such a level of desperation in these next 37 days. And I want people to understand that what you think you have been through already, you know, the last 8 years, what we are about to experience in these next couple of weeks, this next month plus, I think that it's going to blow the minds of people. I mean, I think we're going to see some things that we have not experienced as a nation. And as you said earlier, I actually feel very blessed to be alive right now because I mean, I have studied our country. I have studied our founders. I've studied the warfare, the wars that we have been in. And I look at things and I say, God, you know, we're in the lead here. We have the momentum on our side. We have the mass of people on our side. We have the majority on our side. All we have to do is make the decision to get out of the bleachers, get onto the field, folks, and leave it all on the field in these next 37 days. Do not leave yourself with any excuses on the 6th of November by saying, well, I woulda, shoulda, coulda done something else. You do it now and do it for the next 37 days as hard as you can. That's why I'm out here in studio with Alex, because I'm traveling again around this country, basically with the same message to get people fired up, to get people inspired, to give people hope, and to make sure that the American people understand that we are in a war right now. This is a, intellectual, physical, emotional, and definitely a spiritual war. And I appreciate the fact that you, Alex, always bring the idea of faith back into this, because I think that people have to have faith in each other. We are facing a dark, soulless group of people, Marxists, that have no soul. They are dark-hearted, and their idea about the way the United States of America should be is without a constitution, total control of the Supreme Court, total control of our lives, own nothing, be happy, as Klaus Schwab has stated many times and written about in his book, The Great Reset, which I hate to even talk about it, but I want people to understand, you have to understand your enemy. You have to read their doctrine. You have to listen to what they say. And the fact that I'm sitting here and understanding what our enemy is trying to do, because when I say our enemy, I hate to say that about somebody who is a American serving in our government, but these people are enemies of America.
They've hijacked. Indeed, they hijack the government and they pretend to be those who you have voted into position. Unfortunately, it is not that. And we need to understand our enemy, especially those from within. Because we are living in a perilous time. We are living in a time that tomorrow is not promised to no one. Anything and anything can happen at any given moment. And on that note, let's turn our attention now to the European, Middle East, and Asia news coverage by our local anchor, Victoria Ezuba.
Thank you, Veronique. Hello, everyone. I'm Victoria Ezuba, giving you the headlines for Europe, Middle East, and Asia. let's dive in. We are starting off with Lithuania. In Europe, Lithuanians are voting in the second and final round of the country's parliamentary elections.
Lithuanians are voting in the second and final round of the country's parliamentary elections, with the Conservative governing party still in contention despite first-round gains from the left-leaning opposition. Strict COVID-19 measures during the pandemic, political scandals and an influx of migrants from neighbouring Belarus have hurt the popularity of the sitting government, which took office in 2020. The vote in Lithuania, which borders Russia to the west and Belarus to the east, comes at a time when Russia's war in Ukraine is fueling greater concerns about Moscow's intentions in the strategically important Baltic region. It will set the political tone in the nation for the next 4 years. But despite a possible shift to the left, analysts say there won't be a significant change in Lithuania's foreign policy. The opposition Social Democrats came out of the first round with an edge 2 weeks ago, taking 20 of the first 70 seats to be decided.
We follow now with news from Georgia, Russia. International observers have confirmed there were issues in the electoral process during Georgia's election to access the EU.
International observers have confirmed there were issues in the electoral process during Georgia's Sunday elections. The head of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe delegation said there were cases of vote buying and double voting, especially in rural areas. He also said an observer from his delegation found his car vandalized.
The presence of cameras of the ruling party in the polling stations and people in front of polling stations tracking and possibly controlling voters led widespread climate of pressure and party-organized intimidation and a feeling of Big Brother is watching you, as one of our observers depicted it.
The Central Election Commission has completed counting votes, with the ruling Georgian Dream Party claiming a majority of nearly 54%. The four parties in the opposition Coalition for Change, which came second in the elections, are giving up their parliamentary mandates, according to the union's head.
Moving on to the Middle East, Iran Supreme Leader responded to Israel and Israel's attack, but did not call for retaliation.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, stopped short of calling for retaliation following Israel's attack on his country. He said the attack must not be exaggerated but also not underplayed, and called on Iranian officials to decide how to respond in the interest of the nation and people.
بایستی خطای محاسباتی رژیم صهیونیستی باید به هم بخوره. قدرت و توانایی و ابتکار و اراده ملت ایران رو هنوز درست نتوانستن بفهمن. این رو ما باید به اینها بفهمونیم.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also spoke about the attack at the funeral of an Israeli soldier on Sunday, saying it achieved all its goals. Saturday's attack damaged facilities at a secretive military base southeast of the Iranian capital and killed 4 Iranian soldiers.
On the other hand, in Israel, 1 person has been killed and at least 30 are injured after a truck slammed into a bus stop in northern Tel Aviv.
1 person has been killed and at least 30 people have been injured after a truck slammed into a bus stop north of Tel Aviv. Rescue services said 6 people are also in a serious condition. Local media reported that many of those injured were elderly people disembarking from the bus. The attack occurred near the headquarters of Israel's Mossad spy agency, as well as a central highway junction. Police say the attacker was neutralized, but it was not clear whether the suspect was stopped or killed. They're suspecting a terror attack. Tensions have soared since the outbreak of the war in Gaza, with Israel regularly carrying out raids in the occupied West Bank and attacks in Israel increasing as well.
Moving on to Asia, completely into the Philippines, Let us hear the latest from Hurricane Christine on its path from the Philippines.
Welcome to Head Start. We begin with the devastation left in the Philippines in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Christine. The death toll, according to disaster officials, is now at 110 and is expected to rise. 500,000 people have had to flee their homes due to the floods, while rescuers race against time to find the 42 people still missing. Christine is now considered the deadliest storm to hit Southeast Asia this year.
Have you ever heard of Agenda 2030? Let me tell you. Beverly Toner from GB News dives into the UN Summit for the Future and the true intentions behind the pact and for Agenda 2030. On the surface, it's all about sustainability, global cooperation, and protecting future generations. But what if there is a darker side? From digital governance to global control, Beverly explores how these initiatives could reshape our world, and not for the better. Is it really about equality or is it about control? Listen to how this global agenda might impact your freedoms, your privacy, and your way of life.
For the future sounds all lovely and warm and collaborative. Who wouldn't want to think about the future and a harmless pact to help protect humanity, all with your best interests at heart? Call me a skeptic. I think we need to dig a little deeper into this. So this pact was announced on the first official day of the UN's Summit of the Future. Perhaps it is going to make all our lives better, or perhaps it marks a significant step towards a technocratic vision of global governance. The Summit of the Future, which in itself is a weirdly broad title because there wouldn't be much demand for a summit discussing what's just happened in the past, was held at the beginning of the 79th session of the annual UN General Assembly. This summit has been in the making since at least 2022. It's following repeated calls by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to accelerate the completion of Agenda 2030. These were the goals set out by the UN in 2015. Now, Agenda 2030 basically underpins everything that is happening in towns and cities all across the world. And once you understand that, much of life, even here in the UK, begins to make perfect sense at a time when it can feel that nothing makes any bloody sense. Agenda 2030 consists of 17 sustainability goals. So that means that elected and some not so elected politicians came together and agreed that if only every government in the world would adhere to these 2030 aims, some might say instructions, we could eradicate poverty, improve health and education, reduce inequality, tackle climate change, and so on. You might recognise the branding. It is everywhere, although you probably almost never consciously noticed it. It was included in the Euros football. It appeared at the Olympics. It is in every corporate handbook and on every website. Open your new mobile phone and there it is in the apps, even though you didn't ask for it. But of course, who wouldn't want to achieve these noble aims of eradicating poverty and so on? It all sounds so lovely and benign. You would be a very brave leader to stand up at a UN assembly and say, actually, I quite like poverty and inequality, or I don't like poverty and inequality, but I do also have an obligation to make decisions which help people who voted for me in my own country too. And that, above all these lofty global aims, will be foremost in my mind. But as it is also lovely and benign, this Pact for the Future sits alongside two other complementary documents. They are the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. So what exactly is this Pact for the Future? Well, according to the United Nations, it covers a wide array of themes, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, digital cooperation, aka clamping down on free speech, human rights, gender equality, youth and future generations. It also focuses on transforming global governance to better address these challenges. Global governance, you say? Well, I didn't vote for anyone's Prime Minister but my own, and I certainly don't want one that is imposed upon me from another country. Have a look at a clip from the UN General Assembly where the Pact for the Future was adopted.
The commitments embodied in the Pact and its annexes reflect the collective will of member states and must guide our actions and encourage us to promote international peace and security, invigorate implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, foster just and inclusive societies, and ensure that technologies always serve the common good of humankind. We must move forward together in a spirit of solidarity and multilateral cooperation.
As you can see, world leaders are, on the surface at least, committed to this vision. But it is not possible to achieve these utopian ideals without a deliberate, perhaps forceful, redistribution of food, goods, property, and rights. Just like good old-fashioned communism, the ambition for equal outcome for everyone always results in the very rich getting supremely richer, the very poor perhaps being lifted up a little, but the billions in the middle getting colder, poorer, hungrier, and enslaved within their digital prison. Just as communism was never really about equality, this new version, which is deceptively called stakeholder capitalism, is not about equality either. This is Klaus Schwab's "you will own nothing and you will be happy" mantra. No, you won't. You'll be miserable, you'll be weak, you'll be obedient, but hopefully sufficiently angry to try and break free. The UN's Agenda 2030 is all about control. Leaders lacking empathy are not troubled by reducing humanity to a mere data set upon which they can keep tabs. And at that point, we, the people, are nothing more than a commodity which can be monetized. Will the people of the world comply with this technocratic vision, or will we rebel? Can we even find a different way to function outside of a digital prison? The Pact for the Future and its complementary documents are on the surface designed to create a more interconnected and cooperative world. The Global Digital Compact claims to aspire to making the use of digital technologies more responsible and inclusive. Who wouldn't want that? They claim that they are concerned about digital privacy, cybersecurity, and the digital divide. But whenever governments try to control the behemoth that is the online world, every road leads to the suppression of free speech and the ludicrous idea that someone somewhere in a lavishly glazed office can decide what is factual information and what is misinformation. The Declaration on Future Generations cleverly ramps up the guilt. Who could possibly resist measures that would be required to protect the planet for their children and grandchildren? And yes, of course, we need to leave this world in a better state than when we found it. But this has all been decided on the publicly indisputable assumption that there is consensus on, for example, man-made climate change due to carbon emissions.
Because 21st century challenges require 21st century solutions, frameworks that are networked and inclusive, and that draw on the expertise of all of humanity. I called for this summit because our world is heading off the rails, and we need tough decisions to get back on track.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been a strong advocate for these initiatives. Let's hear what he had to say about the importance of these documents.
Conflicts are raging and multiplying, from the Middle East to Ukraine and Sudan, with no end in sight. Our collective security system is threatened by geopolitical divides, nuclear posturing, and the development of new weapons and theaters of war. Resources that could bring opportunities and hope are invested in death and destruction. Open pathways to new possibilities and opportunities. Our world is going through a time and turbulence and a period of transition. But we cannot wait for perfect conditions. We must take the first decisive steps towards updating and reforming international cooperation and make it more networked, more fair, and more inclusive now. And today, thanks to your efforts, we have. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations open pathways to new possibilities and opportunities.
Guterres emphasises the need for urgent action and global cooperation to address the challenges we face. The race is on to save the planet and possibly line the pockets of vested interests in captured regulatory bodies, made up of a very small group of experts rather than through any democratic process. Thankfully, Agenda 2030 has already sparked debates and protests in various parts of the world, despite it getting almost no mentions in the Western, particularly the British mainstream media. The alternative social news media is awash with awareness. Millions of you are concerned about the potential loss of national sovereignty and also individual freedoms. Agenda 2030's commitment to homes being given to climate migrants will make small boat illegal migration look utterly trivial. This powerful technocracy might prioritise so-called efficiency. They might persuade countries to be responsible over issues such as cleaner seas, education for girls under otherwise medieval regimes, and even toilets in remote African villages. But it is so obvious in their literature. Have a look, it's in your phone, it's in your apps, that the stuff which really excites them is not the expensive projects like dredging plastic from oceans or building toilets for Maasai tribes. It's the profitable stuff. It's the wind turbines. It's the solar farms currently being built on top of beautiful, natural, life-giving farms. It is surveillance on the streets. It's the highly profitable diversity and inclusion ticket, which perhaps contains a blatant contradiction between the UN's ambition to empower women and girls, but also heavily promote the trans ideology, which can steal spaces from those women and girls. We all need to become hyper-vigilant to the 2030 UN agenda. Its endgame is control. Where and when you travel, what you eat, who you can see, what you can say. But all is not lost. The Dutch farmers and the Canadian truckers showed what can be done when people come together, driven by the need to put individual freedoms first. The freedom to transact, to trade, to refuse an injection that they didn't want in the case of the truckers, even just to grow the food that the farmers want to grow in the way that they want to grow it. This sort of collective has immense power. Once a group of people with megalomaniacal drives and vested profit motives control the food, they control the people. So stay informed about these developments and understand their implications. Engage in discussions, ask questions, make your voice heard. Chat about it at the bus stop. Show your mate down the pub that this agenda is already hidden in their handset. Ask how they feel about the erosion of their freedom from a small number of power trippers eating canapes in Europe. There are many ways to get involved. Attend public forums, vote in elections, join advocacy groups, and stay active in your community. By participating in these processes, we can help ensure that our future is shaped by you, the people, which is exactly how it should be.
Well. I really don't have nothing to add to what Beverly has spoken except for this. There is a kingdom that has no borders, but is full of many nations. And in this kingdom, we have true sustainability, true cooperation among our citizens, and we truly protect and train our future generations. If you want to find out more about it, tune in onto this platform. And thank you very much. Over to you, Veronique.
Thank you very much, Anchor Victoria, for the beautiful report for Europe, Middle East, Asia, and especially on that Agenda 2030. People need to wake up. And I really like the final remark that you brought about that kingdom that could not be shaken. People really need to wake up. It's a time for us. We're living a perilous time, and it's in the food, it's in the grocery, it's everywhere on the product. I mean, you could just name it. The elite agenda, they have one goal, just to annihilate human on planet. But I got bad news for you. It will never happen. Let's hear the tale right now from our health anchor, Aida.
Thank you, Veronique. I am Ida Serino Lee giving you health news. Now, our first news that we have is there's this slew of food recalls out there that we don't know which they are. So if you look at the next video, we're going to give you a list of the recalls that we have right now.
Safety concern tonight for shoppers. There's been another massive food recall, and this time it's a popular item on the menu. KCAL News reporter Nicole Comstock in Upland now with what you need to know. Nicole.
Well, you know, most people we spoke with tonight hadn't even heard about any of these food recalls. So they say they think the government really needs to do more to notify people about potential food contamination before we reach the level of one of these big outbreaks.
I'm definitely going to check the chicken I bought, just grab a prepackaged meal, and now you know it could be dangerous to you.
Shoppers everywhere are shocked to learn about 3 major nationwide foodborne illness outbreaks.
It's very concerning.
Just days after 12 million pounds of meat and poultry and 600 varieties of frozen waffles sold at major stores like Trader Joe's, Albertsons, Target, and Walmart were recalled for listeria.
It's not a good thing. I tend to buy those salads with the meats and stuff.
McDonald's quarter pounders are now being linked to an E. coli outbreak that's left 1 person dead and sickened people in 10 states, although E. coli has not been detected in burgers here in California.
We depend on the government to protect us, and I'm barely finding about it from you, so that's kind of scary that I wasn't aware of this.
Shoppers we spoke with say the government must do more to improve our food safety system.
This is the result of having a highly industrialized, processed food supply, which also means that your food is getting processed at different places at different points in time, each of which creates an opportunity for the introduction of some contaminant.
CBS medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder says one issue, when public health is underfunded, there aren't enough food safety inspectors to go around.
And so I think all of these recent food outbreaks, contamination events, are a signal to us that we do need to be paying a bit more attention to testing in some of these facilities.
Some say they've already lost trust in the food system.
That's kind of one of the reasons we kind of started doing our own little vegetable gardening at home.
But it's hard to make your own meals when you're so busy making a living.
The overuse of antibiotics, you know, you buy a pre-made chicken and it's so puffed up, who knows, it tastes like rubber.
And the USDA is urging people to check the 326-page long list of these food recalls on its website. They say because a lot of these products were processed in different locations, the labels will have different names on them, and some of them date all the way back to the middle of June. If you have one of those items in your refrigerator or your freezer, you should either throw it away or bring it back to the store and try to get a refund. Reporting in Upland, Nicole Comstock, KCAL News.
Okay, I guess we have to cook at home. So going to our next news. The next news is about American Cancer Society saying that there's an increase of cancer on younger women. Just watch the video.
Alarming health trend. This is important. A new report released by the American Cancer Society Tuesday is revealing that breast cancer diagnoses are on the rise, especially among younger women.
The report found that breast cancer rates have increased by 1% every year since 2012. And among younger women, the rates have gone up by about 1.4% every year since 2021.
Joining us now is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel, friend of the show. Of course, Dr. Patel, good morning. So the report, it also showed differences among specific groups. We want to pull this up here. Among Asian American and Pacific Islander women under 50, breast cancer rates have increased by 50% since 2000. What a number. Walk us through the study's findings. Why are we seeing this happen with these groups and with younger women?
Yeah, Savannah, Joe, it is very troubling, but it's something that we've been seeing for years now, and now we have some numbers to back it up. So 20 years of data looking at breast cancer, over 200,000 of women that they looked for to see kind of patterns. And as you said, not just an annual increase, but a really troubling increase in the ages of 20 to 29. I want to call that out for a second. 2.51% annual increase in breast cancer rates for the ages of 20 to 29. And then, as you mentioned, at least a percentage a year. And then if you are Asian American, Black, Hispanic, even American Indians, every single kind of racial category had some shift. Asian Americans, higher rates. Black women, even though they have a overall 5% lower breast cancer incidence, they had a 38% higher mortality. So less breast cancer, but when you have it, it's actually killing you earlier. Hispanic women also seeing at least a 2% increase. So this is very troubling news, but it's kind of consistent with what we've seen in the data over the years.
Dr. Patel, I want to ask you about one thing you mentioned, which is that racial disparity of Black women far more likely to die of any type of breast cancer than their white counterparts. Remind us why that is, because it's something we've been talking about for years here, and what we can do to try and close the gap.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this, and in fact, there's actually a separate study to try to understand what the appropriate screening interval is. Just as a reminder, we'll talk about it in a minute, but there are general screening guidelines for overall population of breast cancer. But we know that for Black women, that there are significant risk factors, not just genetic risk factors, but there are also environmental. There's a number of risk factors with Black women, especially coexisting conditions. And on top of that, this is exactly what we need to understand. When do we need to screen? And why is it that they're facing like lower survival rates, higher mortality rates? And also, I think in general, Joe, I think there's just less awareness about this potential. So when women talk about their own breast cancer risks, they are often kind of neglected. And especially if you're a Black woman, often denied that access.
Other issue, right, which we could do a very long segment on is even when we talk about getting screened, it's like, are people getting screened young enough? Then you find out you have dense breasts and you need an ultrasound, but that's often not covered by insurance. What's that's going to cost you? Any other type of screening. But just for somebody who's hearing this and is worried, maybe they fall into any one of these categories we've been talking about, what is your advice for screening and how to talk to your doctor about this?
Look, I think, first of all, dealing with risk factors. We think that alcohol consumption, decreased physical activity, having children later in life, I'm in that category, reduced breastfeeding rates. Environmental researchers are looking into whether any of these could be factors and all of the above. I think every single woman, no matter what age, should talk about breast cancer risk and when they should get screened. 40 is the starting age for all women, but everybody under the age of 40 should ask about kind of their risk when they see their gynecologist.
Dr. Kavita Patel, so important. Thank you very much.
I would suggest that we teach our girls as early as possible to do a self-examination so they can detect any abnormality in their breast as soon as possible. So let's go to the next news. The next news, let me tell you, do you have a child taking any medication for ADHD? So they have found that high dosages of ADHD medications like Ritalin can cause psychosis. Let's watch the next video.
Are issuing a new warning to patients who are prescribed stimulant drugs like Adderall and Vyvanse. This comes from a new study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. It found that taking high doses of these drugs, which contain amphetamine, could put people at a much higher risk of developing psychosis or mania.
In fact, one estimate shows that nearly a third of patients are prescribed dosages that may increase their risk of developing these psychotic symptoms.
NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Sayal joins us now to explain what this study found. Dr. Sayal, good to have you with us. So walk us through which drugs were tested in this study and just how much of a risk doctors found they could pose to patients.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, so the link here between psychosis and mania and amphetamine stimulants isn't new. That's something that we've known for a while. But guys, what is new, just as of a few hours ago, is that we're sort of getting some information about what doses are required to sort of increase your risk here of developing those symptoms like psychosis or mania. And you can see here what we found is that, if you take more than these doses on the screen, so more than 40 milligrams of Adderall, more than 100 milligrams of Vyvanse, or 30 milligrams there of dexedrine, you have a 5.3 greater likelihood of developing psychosis. And that's what the authors considered here a high dose. There's also an increased level of risk for those taking a medium dose, which is, sort of 20 to 40 milligrams of Adderall, about 50 to 100 of Vyvanse. So if you are somebody who's taking those doses, you just want to be a little bit more cautious, especially if you have a family history of somebody in the family who's developed, psychosis or mania. You really want to be careful about how much Adderall or how much Vyvanse you're taking there, guys.
What is it about amphetamines that increases the risk for these severe mental health disorders? And is there anybody in particular who's more at risk?
So we're still learning that, Savannah, but our sort of best guess here is that it's, the neurotransmitter dopamine is what's involved. And so for those who don't know, dopamine is, it's the chemical we often associate with our reward center or pleasure center. It's involved in mood and attention and movement. But guys, in psychosis, we actually think dopamine is implicated because it's found in high levels. And so these amphetamine drugs can actually increase the level of dopamine in the brain. And if you get too much of it, that's what we sort of think is driving the association here, Savannah, but we're still really figuring out the exact reason why.
So we had a separate recent study that found stimulant use in U.S. adults skyrocketing in the last few years, up 30% for people between 20 to 39 years old. At the same time, doctors say developing psychosis or a similar disorder is quite rare. So just how much should this study concern folks?
Yeah, it's a good point, Joe. And so the overall risk is rare. It's about less than 1 in 1,000. But for those who are taking these drugs, and we're all in that age group. I'm sure we all here know people who are taking that, especially with, the COVID pandemic and telehealth and people sort of getting easier access. But guys, I think what people should really know is that if you do have a family history, if you do have, people in the family who've developed schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or psychosis, you really, really want to be careful about taking those higher medium doses. Because guys, I think a lot of people don't sort of get a lot of benefit if you start taking more and more stimulants. It's not really clear if it's doing much benefit for you, but it is increasing your risk. So it's really all about finding that balance and making sure you get the benefit from the drugs without avoiding some of that risk, guys.
For someone who's prescribed this, they're hearing this right now, they're thinking, oh, is my dosage too high? What could this mean? What should you do if you take one of these and you're concerned about your dosage?
Yeah, so it's I would say make sure you actually have a diagnosis or a reason for taking this. I think a lot of us know people who've gotten a hold of these drugs through non-prescription means, and so making sure you actually have an indication or a reason to be on it. And then Savannah, I would just get I would tell people to get in with their doctor and making sure that that dose is sort of at that balance we just talked about, where it's making sure that you're getting the benefit with minimizing the risks and the side effects, and it's going to require some tinkering, playing with the doses a little bit, maybe trying Adderall, maybe trying Vyvanse, sort of figuring out which one's best for you. But as long as you're not taking that high dose for too long, you should be okay, guys. Again, the risk is very rare here.
All right, Dr. Akshay Sayal, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
And our last news that we have for today is the McDonald's E. coli recall and contamination has spread to other states and to other restaurants. More people have died and more people have been affected by this contamination. Let's watch the video.
Outbreak linked to McDonald's. The CDC reporting dozens of new cases today as the outbreak spreads to more states. Maggie Vespa has been following this for us. Maggie, let's start with the latest numbers.
Yeah, so Lester, the CDC says 75 McDonald's customers report contracting E. coli. 22 of them were hospitalized, 2 developing a severe kidney infection, and 1 person dying. The FDA investigating raw onions served on the Quarter Pounder as a potential source, and McDonald's onion supplier, Taylor Farms, saying its food is safe, but they have issued a preemptive recall, adding, quote, "Our priority remains the health and safety of our customers." Now, McDonald's pulling the Quarter Pounder and raw onions from roughly 900 locations, saying they've stopped sourcing from the affected Taylor Farms facility indefinitely. Meanwhile, Lester, the CDC predicts case numbers will keep rising.
I guess McDonald's food is still not good for us, so don't take it. So back to you, Veronique.
Thank Ida for that health report, which we should really pay attention to it, because if we are not healthy, we could not have a perfect body and we could not be living the life that Yeshua came to give unto us. Prior for me to wrap up this news today, I would like to say that in a few days from now, we are going to be going on the poll for the U.S. presidential election. Make sure you choose the right candidate who is going to be able to bring this country back to God, making America great again, healthy again, and polite again, and all what you could see. I know that all the news that you have heard around the globe is very, very alarming. Our world is in turmoil, but one thing is certain: Christ won us all. So for those who have read his constitution, will not be alarm. For those who have read his constitution will know exactly which season we are in. I have told you these things so that in me, in Christ, you may have peace. In this world, you will have tribulation. But take heart, for I have overcome the world. This was the writing, or still the writing of Christ to his disciple, to his follower, not only to his follower, but to whoever would like to live that life that he came to give us. Don't be fearful. Don't be dismayed, for he has not given us the spirit of fear. He has not given us the spirit of dismay, but of power, sound love, and mind. So let's stay connected and keep each other in the loop about what is happening around the world, especially on the food industry, because they're going to have a sword, they're going to have a fight, they're going to have this, they're going to have a, then you need to find out what are they putting in your food or in your water, fluoride and all this one, just to kill you little by little. But it will not happen. It will not take shape for those who follow Christ, for their eyes are wide open and they have the understanding of the Holy One to understand and perceive everything that's going on behind the curtain or under the rug. That wraps up today this edition of MBNK News, special report on global headlines update for the month of October 2024. Thank you for joining us around the globe with Anchor Victoria, Anchor Aida, and myself, Veronique, here for this global news journey. MBNK News is excited to bring you the latest global news and hope you are eager, as we are, in keeping up with what is happening around the globe. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more updates. Stay tuned and stay informed. Thank you.